Hello, my name is Ian Adel. Welcome to Lecture 2 on the rise of the nativist movement in contemporary American politics. So, as we know, on November 5th of 2024, America has elected, yet again, Donald John Trump to be their president. Now, I am going to be critiquing a lot of the position's executive orders that have been enacted, not only for their constitutional ramifications, but also for their sociological collateral consequences that they are seeking to promote. So, first and foremost, I want to give you a brief history on what nativism was when it first came to America. So, nativism really started to ramp up, you know what I'm saying, from 1850s to 1890s, and then it carried its way up to the 1920s. So one of the first nativist acts that was actually passed was the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. And this act basically wanted to limit and dilute the concentration of people coming into America of Asian descent because they feared that number one, they were basically competing with American jobs. Number two, they were decreasing unemployment and basically causing declining wages for the white person. Now, this same belief of they're coming in, they're taking jobs, but yet they're also benefiting on the welfare system were all the same ramifications for what caused the Know Nothing Party. The Know Nothing Party was this idea that contended that we need to combat foreign influences and promote traditional American ways. And if you listen to everything that Donald Trump has said, he has said that we need to lock up the border. He has said that we need to basically stop any individual under any set of circumstances from coming into America if they are simply here on the procedural technicality violation rather than actually committing a substantive crime. And what do I mean by that? So I'll break that down for you. A procedural issue, like in a parole law, for example, if you're convicted of a felony, you're not permitted to marry another person who's a felon. You're not permitted to associate with another person who's a felon. So even if you don't commit a direct crime, you can still be in trouble for committing this parole technicality violation. This parole technicality violation is enough to cause recidivism, which means to end up putting you back into prison. Trump wants to apply a very similar phenomenon because President Trump does not want immigrants coming into America under any circumstances, and he is trying to make immigration even more difficult. He doesn't even want to define what a citizen technically even is. The 14th Amendment does it, and I actually have it pulled up right here with me. I'm reading it right out of the Constitution. Section 1. All persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States, and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens, and these are protections and privileges, in other words, if you don't know what that clause is. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property, which is due process, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of laws. And what that means is that the government cannot classify you differently depending on a certain protected suspect class, whether that be race, whether that be gender, whether that be religion. They cannot deprive you of due process, etc., etc. So here's the thing. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state in which they reside. So if you have a child or a spouse that is born in America, they are in fact citizens of the United States because the 14th Amendment, not President Trump, not Congress, defines your status as a citizen. President Trump does not want to grant any form of exception if you have a child in America that is a citizen and a parent that may be illegal, or one of your spouses, whether that be your husband or your wife, is here legally and the other spouse is here illegally. If you have such that detrimental reliance on one another, then you should also be protected under the 14th Amendment. However, the Supreme Court has not answered this legal question yet, defining citizenship status. And with the composition of the court, they're probably not going to answer in my favor, or even in the favor of many other people who want to see those protections specifically enumerated rather than just implicit. Because I believe they are. Because privileges or immunities, I believe you're right under the 9th Amendment as a person to get married, or as a parent to have your relationship with your child, should not be preempted in accordance with your citizenship status. Our country was also founded on immigration. Now, Trump is enacting these laws, and I'm going to use it. They're trying to funnel out and dilute the concentration of immigrants. And he's really relying on this idea that was spelled out in the Johnson-Reed Act of 1924. It's also known as the Immigration Quota Acts of 1924. And this wanted to dilute immigration to only 2% of the total people of each nationality in the United States in 1890. And it totally prohibited immigration from Asia. So it was further extending the provision of the Chinese Exclusion Act, and it excluded anyone who was ineligible for citizenship due to race or nationality, which that is a problem, because now they're trying to dilute the concentration of immigrants to the extent to favor or privilege, aka the white person. They're trying to form this idea of, I am not a nativist. I am only protecting the interests of employment for me. I'm only trying to look out for my socioeconomic status. I don't care if these people are coming in, if they're in poverty or not. And that's the modern Republican notion. They do not care whether or not there is an individual that is coming into America because they are combating poverty or they are combating some sort of socioeconomic status. They even seek to impose adverse childhood experiences in children. You, President Trump, cannot deport children if they are citizens of the United States solely because their parent is not given full legal citizenship. You can't. It is unconstitutional. There is a detrimental reliance, or a term as us legal scholars use, called the doctrine of promissory estoppel. If you have this detrimental reliance that is foreseeable, that an individual relies on in civil law, which I believe it should be able to be extended in this case, then you cannot merely just sit back and say, there should be no exceptions. The law is the law. Well, sometimes there's issues of a matter of equity. And I believe that the court can use their equity powers in this case to establish that there are exceptions to President Trump's executive order. So now that was a brief history of what nativism is. That was a brief history of what the issues are that really took fruition. I also wanted to add that the Know Nothing Party was this idea to combat foreign influences and uphold and promote traditional American ways, in other words. Because the Know Nothing parties was this party that was essentially afraid of immigrants. They were essentially scared that any immigrant that came to America was going to take away their jobs. Now, before we get into the sociological aspect, we got to get into the legal aspect first. Because, remember, I'm not arguing my opinions. I'm telling you what the law states, and I'm pondering questions that I do believe should be answered based on the law. Now, the first issue is President Trump signed this executive order. It's called Protecting the Meaning and Value of American Citizenship. Now, I want to break this down and show you the parts of how it's promoting collateral consequences and how it's directly attacking socioeconomic status and how it's causing the issue of poverty, the issue of the war on drugs, etc., etc. But I got to break it down piece by piece for you. So here is what he's saying. So he's listing out Section 1 of the 14th Amendment specifically, which I just read to you, and he's basically reiterating what it says. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of a state wherein they reside. The provision rightly repudiated the Supreme Court's shameful decision in Dred Scott v. Sanford, which misrepresented the Constitution as permanently excluding people of African American descent from eligibility of U.S. citizenship solely based on their race. So that is correct. The executive order is correctly acknowledging that the Dred Scott case was morally abhorrent to the extent that it was disenfranchising African Americans. And that's the reason why the 14th Amendment was listed in the Constitution, in essence. But this is where President Trump's taking it. He's trying to say it doesn't extend to immigrant rights. He's trying to merely state that it was only added to protect citizens that were born in the United States that were subsequently disenfranchised as a result of slavery. Now, but, and I quote, the 14th Amendment has never been interpreted to extend citizenship universally to everyone born within the United States. That is unconstitutional. That statement is unconstitutional. What did the 14th Amendment say? Okay, let's go back to it now. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. What did President Trump say? But the 14th Amendment has never been interpreted to extend citizenship to everyone born within the United States. What's wrong with that? He is redefining what the Constitution is saying. He's a lot like Andrew Jackson. He doesn't like it, so he's going to extrapolate what the data says, and he's going to put it in his own words of what he thinks it should be. Now, the Constitution, until it is amended, and it goes through a proposal and ratification process, which is very difficult, which I'll discuss that burden after I'm done reading this, makes it really, really challenging to really prove that this is not what the Constitution says. Just applying originalism and textualism to this, for you non-legal scholars out there, that just means just taking a look at this and just reading it just straight up and not even taking a purposive approach. You're just trying to understand what the specific legal language is saying. Just taking a look at the prima facie impression, it shows that Trump is automatically unconstitutional with this one provision at least. Now let's break it down. The 14th Amendment has always excluded from birthright citizenship persons who were born in the United States but not subject to the jurisdiction thereof. So what he's saying here is that if you're not born in the United States now, you're not a citizen of the United States. But he just said up here that the 14th Amendment has never been interpreted to extend citizenship universally to everyone born in the United States. Now, I have a problem with those two statements because they are utterly contradictory. To the extent that you can't be a citizen and be born in the United States, and you can't be a citizen and not be born in the United States, and nevertheless, he's redefining what the 14th Amendment's saying in the first place. Consistent with this understanding, the Congress has further specified through legislation that a person born in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof is a national and citizen of the United States at birth. So now he's saying that now you're a citizen at birth, reiterating his second point, but his first point said that you're not a citizen if you're not born in the United States. Generally mirroring the 14th Amendment's text is what he said. So first of all, he doesn't support the 14th Amendment. Then he does support the 14th Amendment. His job is to faithfully execute the laws and the Constitution of the United States. That is his job as president. His job is not to cherry pick what he thinks should or should not be interpreted as the law. Now, his next statement now. Among the categories of individuals born in the United States and not subject to the jurisdiction thereof, the privilege of United States citizenship does not automatically extend to persons born in the United States. Now he's going back to saying that if you're born in the United States, you're not necessarily a citizen. So that means even if you do not receive immigrant status, even though this is directly attacking immigrants, whether they be legal or illegal, this is also attacking people who have immigrant relations. And this is also attacking people simply on the basis of, if you're born in the United States, you're not necessarily a citizen. So now is he trying to contend that you're not a citizen? I'm not a citizen? Just based on this result? This is not just an issue for immigrants. This is now an issue for Americans. Because if you're not a citizen, then you can't receive benefits. You're saying you can't vote. That's the reason why he's trying to harm this. And he's trying to make it more difficult for minorities, for immigrants, for people who are less privileged to be able to receive benefits. That's what his goal is here. Now, when that person's mother was unlawfully present in the United States and the father was not a United States citizen or lawful permanent resident at birth, the said person's birth, or when that person's mother is present in the United States at the time of said birth was lawful but temporary, and the father was not a United States citizen or lawful permanent resident at the said time of birth. Now he's trying to contend that the father and not the mother is what determines their child's citizenship status. This sounds a lot like Dale's Code coming out of Virginia. It really, really, really does. Looking at the doctrine of primogeniture, this is very scary, in essence, that we're essentially backtracking. And now, if you're a Republican out there, you're a Democrat, you're an independent out there, I'm not asking you to agree with me or disagree with me. You're entitled to your own opinion. But what I am asking you to do is condemn this executive order. Because whether you're a Republican, whether you're a Democrat, and whether you're an independent, no matter what your stance is on immigration, this is narrowly cherry-picking certain data so that you and I and immigrants are not necessarily citizens. That's what this is trying to do, in essence. It's depressing. It's just utterly morally reprehensible. It's just inconceivable that a president that's supposed to be serving the people and serving the common good is passing these types of laws. I mean, because technically this is a law. The executive branch does make laws. It's not just Congress. These are being enforced by administrative agencies. They literally are. The president is the chief executive and chief law enforcement officer of the United States. Now, you should have considered this when you voted. When you vote, voting matters. We're not in a direct democracy. We're in a Madisonian Republican institution of government. And because we're in that, that's the only way that we can put people into office who represent our interests. Is this really our interest? Are we really going too far? Because this seems like we're going a little too far. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not that the 14th Amendment should even be reconsidered to begin with. It grants citizenship to people, you know what I'm saying, who are born or go through a naturalization process. And now he wants to determine the citizenship status of a child based solely on the position of their father, not even their mother. I mean, that automatically aligns with intersectionality, basically demonstrating this idea of male privilege now, which this is just absurd. This is really, really absurd. He's basically inferiorizing people. And it's like he has this antipathy that he just morally hates people just because they're an immigrant or they're in a less fortunate status. Now he says it is the policy of the United States that no department or agency, of the United States government shall issue documents recognizing U.S. citizenship or accepting documents issued by state, local, or other governments or authorities purporting to recognize U.S. citizenship to promote, one, when that person's mother was unlawfully present in the United States and the person's father was not a United States citizen or lawful permanent resident at that time of said person's birth. Now, see how he just broke that down? He said, yes, obviously, when the person's mother was unlawfully present in the United States, but then he says, and the person's father was not a U.S. citizen or lawful permanent resident at the time of the person's birth. Really think about that, because now he's demonstrating that, again, citizenship status is derived through the lineage of the person's father. This is not what the 14th Amendment is saying. The 14th Amendment is saying that citizenship status is determined solely based on two characteristics. Was the person born in the United States, or was that person naturalized? And if either one of those questions is yes, or both of those questions are yes, then that person's a citizen. Not based on this notion that you are a citizen if your father and mother were born here. That's not what this is based on. A child can still be a citizen of the United States. And a child may not be deported if they are a citizen of the United States. Then we get into this conception now. If the child's parents are illegal, but the child was born in the United States, then because of that detrimental reliance, should the child be deported or not? Now, back with their family. Now, I argue, no. You cannot be deported if you are a child, even if your parents are in a legal citizenship status, because, now this is very important, please pay attention here, because a child has a detrimental relation with their parents. A child has the privileges and immunities of any other citizen because they are a citizen. And if they have the privileges and immunities, then they cannot be taken away of such protections. If they have the privileges and immunities of being a citizen, and those privileges and immunities permit a regular citizen that's a non-immigrant with those protections, such as a minor child has the right to see their father, or father has right to see minor child, and vice versa for the mother, then why can't that same position be applied to immigrant status? To the extent that you can't deport the parents and that they came into the country under a certain exception that a matter of equity should decide. Nothing in this is even acknowledging that. It's rather saying that if your father was not a citizen or a lawful permanent resident based on the idea of a visa, then you are not a citizen of the United States. And that is unconstitutional because it directly conflicts with Section 1 of the 14th Amendment. Now, this is just depressing. I'm sorry if I keep doing that. It's really, really sad, and it's mind-boggling that we have a president in office who doesn't know how to govern. He doesn't understand checks and balances, and he's violating people's rights in the process. Then, here we go. Now we're getting into some psychological issues. Mother means the immediate family biological progenitor. Father means the immediate male biological progenitor. So that's automatically violating transgender protections because he's basically defining gender to begin with, which is wrong, which that's another discussion to talk about. But okay, well, what happens if there's a guardian? What happens if the child received guardianship status? The executive order doesn't discuss that. See the problem again? All right. Nothing in this order shall be construed to impair or otherwise affect the authority granted by law to an executive department, agency, or the head thereof. So he's basically saying, you got your informal discretion, but you still got to follow what my executive order is saying. He only put that in there so if a judge reads through it, they can't say it's not unconstitutional. The functions and the of the director of the OMB, oh, by the way, which is a Project 2025 candidate, Russell Vought, relating to budgetary, administrative, or legislative proposals, which a lot of these other factors in here really aren't relevant to the executive order. They're just making it omnibus at this point. But think about the ramifications of redefining American citizenship. Are we citizens? Are immigrant citizens? Are people's family who've been in America for, 10, 15 generations citizens? Maybe, maybe not under this executive order. You see what I'm saying? That's how severe this executive order is. Nobody is paying attention to that. We need an action filed in court, and I'm willing to write an amicus curiae brief because the Supreme Court needs to determine the question that I just asked. Are there exceptions to immigrant status? Now we got to ask other questions too. Second, if someone's spouse is in the United States, and one of the spouses is illegal and the other one is legal, then is it permissible that, that promissory estoppel protection, quote unquote, should apply? Can't say it's promissory estoppel because it's not an issue in a matter of tort law, but it kind of is because it deals with this detrimental reliance and this foreseeable detrimental reliance. And then here comes the next question. If someone comes into America under duress or a matter of necessity, or they're fleeing for asylum, can they become citizens? Should our laws grant them exceptions? He's trying to create this dry, cutthroat policy that if you are a citizen of the United States, and you're born here, then you can be entitled to our benefits. You basically have to, quote unquote, come through the door legally. But then with this executive order, he's stating, on the other hand, that people that are born in the United States are not citizens. It doesn't matter if the 14th Amendment says they're citizens. In other words, they're not a citizen because the 14th Amendment was only being used to combat racism, and it should be interpreted more narrowly instead of being interpreted so broadly. That's what this executive order is trying to say. Basically, the scope of the 14th Amendment is not broad to encompass these issues that I've been discussing. The 14th Amendment is mainly this issue that is basically a moot point, is what he's trying to say in essence. Now, it's not a moot point. The 14th Amendment gives federal courts the power to answer these questions, but he's basically trying to say, nope, it doesn't, because basically I'm President Trump and I can do whatever I want. That's basically what he's saying. Now, we're going to take a look at some sociological aspects. Now, this is where it gets a little depressing. Immigrants. Now we got to ask ourselves, what's the reasoning for why President Trump doesn't want immigrants to come into America? Well, the voters say that the reason why they supported him for the number one issue is because of this issue with the fentanyl crisis. Okay? The fentanyl issues. Now, I'm not saying that there's not fentanyl. But we have a criminal justice system in America. And this criminal justice system in America can resolve these issues, even with its flaws, because it has a lot of flaws in them, and I would never say it doesn't. But the question becomes, is this person committing a substantive, violent offense? Not these issues of these drug crimes. We're going back to the 1970s and 1980s, where we're starting our mass incarceration based on the war on drugs. That is not who we are as America anymore. That's not who we should become anymore. And it's only going to contribute to more of the school to prison pipeline for immigrants if they are granted citizenship, because it in essence it just is. There's going to be more people going to prison, going along the prison route, going through this, are you an immigrant? Are you not an immigrant? Et cetera, and it's going to basically promote the issues of intersectionality and collateral consequences. This executive order is very indeterminate. Very indeterminate. And it's very similar to the issues in our parole system, to the extent that he's trying to backtrack on many laws that have addressed these issues that really were not a problem. You realize crime is actually not going up anymore. I know the reason why. You might say, well, take a look at the news. This is the reason why X. Well, see, drug crimes are going up. See, property crimes are going up. Violent crimes are going up. The reason why you say that is because it's being broadcasted more. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the crimes are in fact going up, that the rates are going up. And they'll say, well, why is there so many people in prison? Well, that's because of the issue of recidivism based on the parole technicality issues in our system of government. And basically the punishment imagination, where it's this belief that we need to lock people up because you are, quote unquote, not a person that should be in society. Now, extending that to immigration, there's this belief among the American population, well, you are not an immigrant and that came in here legally. We're not going to define if you are legal or not. We're not going to even explain whether or not it's constitutional or not to circumvent the 14th Amendment. But we're just going to say we just don't want you here. And that's brute. There's no grounded rationale for making such a decision. Now we got to take a look at punishment philosophy. Punishment philosophy demonstrates this issue of, is it retribution? Is it deterrence? President Trump is unfortunately promoting assaultive retributivism. Okay, and I'll repeat that again. Assaultive retributivism. And what this means is we should hate criminals, in this case, via immigrants, because they came into America, and just the fact that they're in America and they violate the USC code, because there is a code on it, that itself is a crime, and that itself warrants punishment. Not if they're, they're coming here and they're not committing property crime, they're not committing violent crimes, they're not committing any other crimes. Just the fact that they're here and they didn't go through the process that I want them to go through, they need to be deported. And they should not be extended the right to citizenship, because the 14th Amendment is not protecting all people born in the United States, even though that's what it says. So I see even people like Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito, who are strict constructionists on that core, in essence textualists, are going to have a problem with that type of language. I mean, even as corrupt as they may be with the investigations that they're under, I still see the issue being addressed. All right, thank you so much. Hopefully this topic wasn't too sad, wasn't too boring, but I just wanted to point that out because too many people don't understand the ramifications of what this president's doing. The next topic is going to be on climate change. Thank you all.